And James will be the other presenter that's out and about this morning, and he has the wildebeest on camera with him. And this little guy, because the mother only has 2 nipples, hasn't had a chance to feed, or maybe he did earlier and is finished, and is now just chewing on what looks to be the remains of a hoof. Not sure which kind of hoof, but it is a nice chew toy for these little, almost sub-adult cubs. So my plan for this morning's drive will be to stay with these guys for a little bit longer, just see what they're up to, and also to see if we can catch a glimpse of the slightly younger cub, who is very, very cute, but appears to still be asleep. Obviously, mommy is not out and about to feed him, so I think the little one is hiding in the den itself. We're watching the sunset safari yesterday. We did have a wonderful afternoon spent with Shadow and Sindile on a little steenbok kill. And I have heard reports that they have moved off Djuma and into Arathusa. So we're going to be following up a little bit later on that, just to see what they're doing. And that hoof, to me, that he's chewing on, looks to be possibly something like a buffalo. It is a large hoof, so maybe buffalo, potentially something like a kudu. So these little ones are almost at the sort of teenage stage, and they are very, very naughty. Just before we went live, the one that was chewing on the hoof decided that he wanted to chew on the car. We had to give him a little bit of a stern talking to, because we don't want them to learn that particular habit. And these two look very peaceful. Mommy's just resting her leg on top of one of her babies. And it's very difficult for us to tell what sex these cubs are at the moment. They are very, very young still, so it is almost impossible to tell. But by watching the behavior, you can sort of get an idea of male versus female, simply because the males will usually be the slightly smaller ones and often quite bullied by the other members of the clan. And this one has decided he or she would like to be part of this meal as well. My suspicion would be that this is a male, just by the fact that he's struggling to get in to have a good feed. And I did just see a little glimpse or a little injury on the back right end of this cub, possibly from being a little bit bullied by the other members of the clan. Oh, excuse me. Dry and dusty this morning. Definitely gone up my nose. The injury doesn't seem to be impeding him in any way. He's not limping or anything. And I've just stopped vocalizing again. But it has stopped now. So just while I've been speculating about the sex of this cub and where it fits in this whole dynamic, Georgianne from Illinois has sent me some valuable updates. So thank you very much for that, Georgianne, and welcome to the Sunrise Safari as always. And Georgianne tells me that this little cub is not related to the other two that are suckling. It is from a different litter, and its mother is the mother of the younger cub. So that's interesting and would explain why it is separate from the other two. And apparently it is slightly older as well. So generally the average, that does make sense in terms of fitting it in with the average number of cubs that a hyena will have. So usually it is about 2 or sometimes 1, and very often one young cub will not make it very far into life just because it's outcompeted by a sibling. I have, however, seen a litter of 3 cubs before, so it's not unheard of. But it does make more sense for it to be the 2 cubs on the right that are suckling part of one litter, and then this little cub is separate from that. And I might be imagining it, but that female hyena looks very, very content. She almost looks as though she's smiling. Just having a listen. And that's one of my favorite things about hyenas, is just how incredibly expressive their faces can be. John Boy has raised an interesting point, and one thing that I was wondering about, which was originally why I suspected or thought maybe that this cub was part of the same litter. And just a little bit earlier, when that cub was licking the face of the female, this little one on the left here, John Boy suggested that it looked like he was begging for milk, and I absolutely agree with you. I think it did look that way. And I have yet to see hyenas allosuckle. As far as I know, they generally don't, unlike lions, which will allow cubs from another female to feed at the same time as their own. As far as I know, and I've never seen it happen, generally spotted hyenas don't. You've got to be very careful about saying that, though, because there will always be exceptions to the rule. But it could well be that this little one is feeling hungry, and its natural instinct, especially if it's a male, is to act very submissive, which is what he did when he went up to lick that female. And maybe that was a way of begging for food. However, she wasn't really interested in displacing her own cubs to look after this little one. And either way, he's obviously given up on that particular venture and decided that a morning nap might be more appropriate. So a nice, peaceful way to start the morning. And den sites are often the best place of how many individuals there are in the clan. However, if there is a nice big kill that one of them's made, they will start to vocalize, and they will often all gather together at the same kill. But they will also regularly, the females especially, will regularly visit the den sites. So the young males will go off on their own, and the females will continuously return just to pop in and see what's happening at the den. And when I was working in terms of trying to work out in terms of motion detection, and we would put them up at the den sites, and they didn't disturb the hyenas, although you had to be very, very careful about putting them out of their reach. Otherwise, you ended up losing them to hyena teeth. But you could put them up and just take photos and it did give us just a nice idea of the core members of each clan in the various areas around the reserve. And obviously the dynamics are always changing, with young males moving off to go and find different mating potentials outside of their own clan, so to find unrelated females. Presence in the morning. And there we have somebody's coming in. And it's always fascinating to watch how the dynamics happen when a hyena comes into a group. And you can judge a lot by the various social greetings between individuals. So it will be quite interesting to see how this one responds to the female that's currently suckling the cubs. And almost instantly, we're given a very valuable insight into this dynamic. So the female that was suckling is very, very submissive to the one that's just come in, and immediately showing submissive behavior, sniffing the genitals. And the whining sounds that you can hear are that little cub just showing its submission to that female. And something has definitely attracted their attention. They're all staring off in the same direction, off to my right. Could be another hyena that is coming through. trying to work out which individual has started suckling off in that direction. And it seems to be that the female that came in was indeed the mother of that cub who was off separately from the other two. And that little cub has now settled down for his or her breakfast meal. And the two females have settled down nicely with their respective cubs. So none of the interaction that we just saw was really in any way aggressive. It's just part of their social greeting and keeping up the social hierarchy. So there was no aggression, even though it might have looked that way with teeth bared and the postures that they adopted. But it's just a way for them to reaffirm who's in charge. Really nice, contented morning pictures. You can see that little one's tongue there, just helping to suckle and also to keep those sharp little teeth from biting onto the nipple too hard. And something has attracted this other female's attention, so she is up and about and investigating. I'm not sure what it is, but it could be another hyena coming to the den. Would like to reposition to see what is going on. However, I don't really want to disturb these hyenas. These two little ones in front of us were born in early February, so that's fantastic. Thank you for that. It puts them at about, the older one at about 7 months, which isn't all that big at the moment. They do seem to be a very similar size. And Lucy has also sent me some info saying that if that female who came in has a large scar on her back, then she will be the dominant female of the clan. Thank you very, very much, guys. Welcome to the Sunrise Safari. It's always great to have that feedback, especially since I have just started here, and I don't know the animals that well yet. So very, very helpful. Now, I would try and get a better visual of that female who came in. However, I've just seen her move right off in front of me into a very thick block. So I don't know what it was that attracted her attention, but she has completely moved off from the den, and I'm not going to attempt to follow her at the moment. But I can look back at some point and just see if I can see a scar on the back. So very helpful, guys. Thank you very much. And the female that did move off, the little cub did follow for a little bit. However, I don't think he is ready to go too far and might come scurrying back fairly soon. So we do have a wonderfully contented scene over here. The cub's just really nice and nestled into mommy. However, I don't think too much is going to change over the next few minutes, so I'd like to take this opportunity to send you across to James for a quick update. But never fear, I'm not going to be going anywhere for the moment, and I will be back with you guys a little bit later, still with these hyena.
Hello everybody on the Twitterverse, the Interverse, and whatever verse you happen to find yourselves on this chillsome morning. Welcome to the Lowveld, welcome to Wendy. I believe you've been looking at some magnificent hyenas with, excuse me, turn my radio down, with Jamie and who's her cameraman this morning? I think it is the inimitable Jean-Dre and his beard. We have Viam on the back today. And my name is James Hendry with a D, not just a R. Difficult to get, I know. And we, at the moment, have seen, actually, we've had a really good morning so far. We've seen impala, we've seen kudu, we've seen waterbuck, we've seen duiker, we've seen one hyena, we've seen a hornbill, and we've seen a couple of drongos. Nothing much in the way of big game. Oh, we've also seen some nyala. Nothing much in the way of big game, but we have come to the far east of the reserve to try and find some lions. The Nkahuma pride was found in and around this area yesterday, and so what we're trying to do here is pick up on their tracks. We've done the entire northern boundary, we've done the entire eastern boundary, and we're now sort of moving into the reserve to around where they used to be. Okay? And basically, the plan is, we've stopped to listen a little bit. We did have reports from somebody that the sensory perception, just send through whatever questions you have to me, and I shall answer them. Right, let's get to it. We're going to head north, slowly along this kind of road that is to the west of our eastern boundary, and see if we can't hear the lions and perhaps pick up their tracks. Right. So, quite a few mammal species that we've seen. And I mean, you were all looking at the hyenas, but Viam and I have had a very pleasant time. Oh, here we go. Viam, the lions have come down here. I'm fascinated that they weren't, where we stopped, they definitely were not on the road. Just listen. No, nothing, but they're definitely on the road here. I'm not sure where they could be going. They weren't on the road down there where we first stopped. Right, so the tracks, one of them is running, definitely. Just keep an eye on there, Vilm. They're not this side. Have you got them that side at all? Okay. Right, so now the trick is
And those cubs are getting a little bit big to sort of squeeze around mom to both suckle at the same time. The one is basically tucked under mommy. And although I haven't seen them do it very much at the moment, this little cub might be showing us what I want to talk about. Generally, when you see suckling animals, little suckling animals, they need to actually stimulate the milk production from their mother. So if those of you who have pet cats have ever seen your cat knead with its paws, so opening and closing, and just pressing it into something whenever they're feeling particularly comfortable, that's a throwback to when they were kittens and suckling, and they use that motion just to stimulate the milk production from the mother. And it's interesting to watch in things like hyenas and lion cubs and leopard cubs. They will all do it in the same way. But it is even more interesting to watch in a baby animal, something like a baby rhino or a baby buffalo. And you actually start to feel quite sorry for the mother, especially as the calves start to approach sort of a year old. And they're still suckling, but they've got a little bit of a horn coming through. And they actually headbutt their mom fairly hard to get that milk flowing. And you do start to see a bit of irritation from the mothers as they do. These guys don't seem to be having too much trouble. And hyena milk is probably some of the most nutritious milk that you can find in the bush. It is very, very high in protein. And that's partly as a result of the incredible large size and testosterone levels of the females. It just allows them to produce really rich milk. So a little bit earlier, when the other female came and joined this female, there was a very interesting display of their social interactions, and almost immediately that went from sniffing around the face to sniffing the genital area. And Connie would like to know if it's only the females that display this ritual sniffing behavior. And the answer to that is no, it is not. The males will also do it, and particularly you will see it between male and female interactions, just because the male is so keen to show his submission to the female, especially when he's trying to approach to mate with her. And very, very often the submissive hyena, which will always be the male in the case of male to female interactions, he will almost immediately lift up his leg and present his genitals for sniffing. And it is obviously the sort of slightly risky position for a hyena to do that, getting a very sensitive area close to some So while we've got these little cubs suckling at about 5 months old, and thank you for that information, Georgianne, and we had the other cub also attempting to suckle at 7 months old, Joyce would like to know at which age they stop suckling and start moving completely to a solid food base. Now, I'm not entirely sure of the exact moment that transition will happen, but I would say it would be somewhere around the year mark. So these little guys do have the teeth and digestive systems that would be capable of dealing with small amounts of meat at the moment. However, they will still be very heavily reliant on their mothers for the next few months. And I think probably the complete transition from still suckling a little bit to having absolutely no milk and a purely meat-based diet will be potentially around the year mark. I could stand corrected on that, but that is sort of what I've observed and understand it to be. And the nice thing about spotted hyenas, which is always pleasant to know and watch, is that these cubs will be perfectly secure from marauding males. So it would be highly, highly unlikely that any strange male is going to come in and kill these cubs, simply because the females are so fiercely, fiercely protective, and it would have to be a very unlucky incidence that would occur. Unlike in lions or leopards, where a strange male would kill the cub that is still suckling, just as a way of bringing that female back into estrus so that he can pass on his own genes. And we do have one coming back in at quite a fast pace. And I think it might be, not sure, but I think it might be that little cub that followed his mother earlier. We potentially won't be able to see him from the angle that you are at. He is tucked in just over the left side of my shoulder, so I shall move my head out of the way so you can get a better view. It might be tucked away behind the trees there, but definitely making its way in. Still, here we go, it's coming through now. Here we go. Okay, not the cub, doesn't look like a cub. On its way back in. And already vocalizing to announce her arrival. And possibly goes that female off again on another mission. So I'm not sure what exactly is happening. Might be something exciting on the go. And there is a very brave starling that is moving across the ground in front of them, and that is actually what gave the cubs the fright just now. We were discussing a little bit about the sniffing ceremony and the greeting ceremony of the hyenas. This is a very brave starling, just picking up some scraps of grass seeds around the den. And Dylan wanted to know if an alpha female would ever bite the genitals of a male that's presented itself to her, or an individual that she didn't approve of. And the answer is potentially yes, probably not seriously, because that individual is displaying very submissive behavior, so there would be no reason for her to do it in a serious attack in any way, or a real sign of aggression. But a little nip is possible, just to keep that particular individual in its place. However, I don't think it happens very often, because that kind of greeting ceremony is well entrenched as part of their social dynamics, and it doesn't really work if there's no trust involved. So it could happen if the male oversteps his boundaries, or a younger, smaller ranking female or a lower ranking female. So it is possible, but unlikely. And it is heating up quite nicely at the moment. And we were just chatting a little bit earlier about my excitement as to the imminent arrival of spring. And Maggie would like to know if that means that the animals are going to mate more, or if they mate at any time of the year, and how that all works. Hi, Maggie. Welcome to the Sunrise Safari. The answer to your question is that it very much depends on the species of animal and whether or not it has a set breeding season. So something like impala will only mate during the months of May and June, and they will all give birth sort of within roughly the space of 3 days towards the end of November or the beginning of December. And those times of the year vary slightly depending on where you are in the country, but they will have a set breeding time. And then something like a zebra or a giraffe, now they do not have set breeding periods, and what you will see is that there will be a peak of births in and around the rainy season, so there will be more animals born around that time. So the animals that give birth will have been mating sort of, in the case of which makes sense because it's resource dependent. Now, for something like any of the predators around here, they do not have a set breeding season. So the lions can give birth at any time or will be mating at any time. And the same for spotted hyenas. However, what you will notice is that there is some level of synchronization in terms of the social predators. So for lions, very often the females' estrus cycles will sync up, and they will be pregnant and have cubs roughly around the same time. And that is just a way of ensuring an increased chance of survival because, as I mentioned before, the lionesses will allosuckle, so they will suckle the cubs that are not their own. And it means that the pride can really truly invest all of its attention and time on looking after those cubs. So there will be some synchronization in that area, but again, there isn't really a peak breeding season for lion cubs. And spotted hyenas will also sync up, and you'll often find that several females, as we have here, have cubs of just a couple of months apart around a den site. And again, although they don't allosuckle, it is just a way of ensuring that the clan's attention is focused around a den and looking after those little cubs while they are growing up. Something like a leopard, however, will simply breed at potentially any time of the year. So a female that does not have a cub that is not suckling or lactating will be able to breed at any time. In terms of birds, just while we're on the subject of breeding patterns, most of the large raptors have already completed their mating and nest building rituals so that their eggs will hatch around the wet season, which again makes sense because there is an increased supply of food. So that is the situation with birds. And then some of the smaller migrants and so on there will be an increase of mating behavior and courtship behavior in springtime. So that is one very brave starling. And it can obviously tell that the hyenas are relaxed and not all that concerned. We can see that that female barely even opened an eyelid. And thank you for this particular question. And the answer to that is probably they are slight scars, whether it's from scratches on the head that were acquired during a hunt or through running through the bushes, or even actually the overly attentive affections from her cubs. So they are teething at the moment, and I'm sure if you have puppies or kittens, you'll know how incredibly sharp those milk teeth can be. And hyena cubs, when they play, are not all that gentle, so they might have broken the skin on that female and made those white patches that look like a little bit like scars. What you will also find with an older female like this is they do start to lose their hair and go slightly bald, especially around the head area. And that becomes more and more pronounced as they grow older, and their spots actually start to fade out. So this is not a young female, and I did notice she is quite large. So I think the combination of balding and then little nicks and scratches around her head have just made scars around it. So a little bit earlier, when that other female came in, we got some great vocalizations from these guys, and some of them sounded a lot like the deep growls, but the cub in particular was making a sort of an almost a giggling sound. And that brings us to Les's question, who would like to know what a laughing hyena is. And Les, that is what is sometimes a sort of a colloquial name that is given to the spotted hyena, just because they have such an incredible vocal range of the various sounds that they make. And they will often giggle, especially very noticeable around a kill. And you can actually pinpoint almost exactly where they are when they've made a kill, because the clan will gather and they do have a wonderfully wide vocal range. And when you get their proper contact call, that very low woo sound, if you are nice and close, you actually hear it almost as a growl or a roar. Very deep bass note that can vibrate through you when they do call close to you. And I'm sure you are all wondering what James is up to, and just to keep you in the loop and up to date, he is still on foot tracking the lions through the bush. He hasn't had any luck so far, but we will keep you updated whenever he does find something to show you. But he is out and about on foot. And while I'm sitting here, I am getting wafts of smell from this den. So it's not a terrible smell. It is sort of similar to a wet, dirty dog kind of scent. And I haven't seen much in the way of bones or anything around the den. There's a little bit. I mean, the cub was chewing on a hoof earlier, but generally they don't drag carcasses back to the den site too often. And what we will start to see is, as the longer the hyenas stay here, the stronger the smell will be, and the more parasites and flies will start to gather around the den. See them here this morning. She keeps lifting her head just to investigate what it is. And you'll see even in her sleep, every now and again, the ears will twitch and turn around.
What he's seeing, and it's fairly self-explanatory, really. A beautiful sighting of the clouds, probably what we would call alto cumulus, if I'm not mistaken, moving gently off to the east past the rising sun, and it's just a lovely kind of golden morning that's starting to develop. It's pretty grey and grim to start off with, but it's now turning into something golden and quite special. In terms of the lions, I'm back in exactly the same place where I last saw you, having driven extensively and failing to find any further evidence of them. So they must be in and around this block here somewhere, I think. So we're going to continue down towards the center of the reserve, possibly to where you saw them earlier yesterday afternoon. I think they've headed back in that direction, and possibly towards Buffelshoek Dam, somewhere in that direction. Our mammal list continues to grow. We've seen a number of enormous herds of nyala, a couple of impala further, and one or two squirrels. An interesting question from Bear. I think Bear? Bear, you want to know when are the trees, James Bear, when are the trees going to get their new leaves? James Bear, I'm not really sure. No, I am pretty sure. The first thing that's going to happen, and this will happen probably very late August, early September, is that the knobthorn trees will get their flowers. They'll start to get a very kind of pale white-yellow flower that will... It fills this whole area with a really very subtle sweet scent. It's a lovely, lovely thing to see, and that's the first sort of sign of spring coming. Then some of the acacias will start to shoot their leaves a little bit after that, and the marulas as well. And slowly the combretum trees or the bush willows will start to do the same thing, and they can all do that probably with the reserves of groundwater and the water in their roots. But the grass will stay this color until the rain comes. Remember, grass is totally dependent on surface water, so it will stay this golden sort of grey. It'll go fairly grey by the time the rains come, but that will only turn green once the first rains come. So that's basically what will happen. The first thing to look out for will be the knobthorn trees come end of August, early September. That's always a wonderful time of the year. It's pretty hot normally, but it's always a kind of, there's a great sense of new life beginning. Right, we're going to carry on looking for the lions, and look at that magnificent sun. It's just warming my face. Franklin's calling as the sun comes out. Also, while I was walking around here just now trying to find the tracks, I did have a scimitarbill calling, and they make a lovely call. right, we're going to go back across to Jamie now, who I believe wishes to greet the hyenas with you, and then you'll probably come back and help us with the lions. So please do come back and help us with the lion tracking. VM and I are proving particularly inadept at it at the moment. See you just now.
So guys, welcome back, and we just wanted to show you that we also have a glorious sunrise from our position at the hyena den. And the votes are in, so thank you for letting me know what you guys want. And apparently most of you are, as much as you love watching the hyenas, would actually like to go and look for something else, which is fair enough, and I share your view. I don't think much is going to change over here. However, we just wanted to bring you back one last time to show you that beautiful sky and to just say goodbye to this wonderful little family scene that is happening here. So we will say goodbye to you guys for now, little hyenas. Have a fantastic morning and be safe. And thank you for keeping us so entertained for our first few minutes this morning. Now, I hear that James needs some help with his lion tracking, so I just wanted to bring you across quickly to say goodbye. So for now, I'm going to send you back to James, go and help him find some lions, and I will head off towards Arethusa, and I'll keep you updated, and I'll see you just a little bit later.